Ireland, Josh. So delighted to have you. I'm going to do a quick intro, Josh, and we'll get cracking on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm good, man.
So 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan, and welcome to the latest episode of our sports show. As you know, each week we premiere in our third part of our series of our show a foreign international event taking place across the world, and we're delighted this weekend to feature a special event. New Japan Wrestling's Battle in the Valley is taking place in San Jose, California. It's a special event, a masterful card put on by New Japan Wrestling, featuring Mercedes Moon, known as Sasha Banks, going against Kyrie. We have a great fight between Tom Lawler versus Homicide, Fred Kozer versus Kenta, Clark Connors versus Zack Sabre Jr., and an 8-man tag team match to get us off. That's going to feature our special guest this evening. He's the longest reigning Impact World Champion in history, the one and only Josh Alexander. He'll partner up with Mascara Dorada, Adrian Quest, and Rocky Romero to take on Kushida, Volador Jr, Kevin Knight, and the DXC. And Josh, first of all, 2022 and 2023, so far, there couldn't be better times to be in the life of Josh Alexander at the moment. Kingpin, #1 in the business. You're looking down at everyone else. Everyone is looking up at you. I can see those belts in the background. You've grafted a long time to get to where you are, as the saying goes, top of the mountain. Does it feel really good to be sitting there on your throne at the moment?
I mean, yes, it is very good. It's been all roses for me since I got to Impact Wrestling, but especially in this past, year plus with, the chase for the Impact World Championship from the X Division straight into now, being longest reigning world champion of all time. Things are good. I get the privilege of having a lot of challengers and, some historic matches and stuff that I never thought possible. From wrestling Tomohiro Ishii or, main eventing the 20-year anniversary of Impact Wrestling against Eric Young and main eventing Bound for Glory and all these other things. It's just, it's a dream come true, and I'm really embracing all of it. So.
And Josh, how do you I know with Impact Wrestling, they give you sometimes the freedom as champion to take part in the these sort of shows. Obviously, you're promoting Impact Wrestling, but do you like maybe stepping away from Impact and stepping into these shows like New Japan Wrestling, stepping into independent sort of shows? Obviously, you're representing Impact Wrestling, but obviously it brings a different sort of challenge, a different variety, stepping into different locker rooms, coming up against other wrestlers, partnering with other sort of wrestlers. Is it vibrant? Is there a bit of freshness, a bit of energy in that?
Yeah, certainly there's a bit of energy. It's vibrant. All those words work really well. There's new competition that you're unfamiliar with, which keeps me fresh and on my toes. And just like for me, since I'm becoming world champion, Impact said it many times. They've kind of labeled me the face of Impact Wrestling right now, as I am world champion and all that stuff. And I take that very seriously. So anytime I get to step foot in any ring that isn't an Impact ring, be it New Japan or somewhere else, I feel like I have that I have that Impact Wrestling bumper sticker on my back. So if any fans from a different market that are fans of it, New Japan Pro Wrestling or any other company where I'm wrestling, see me and they like what they see and they tune into Impact Wrestling, they find, Chris Bays and Ace Austins and, the Mickey James that they've once known and loved, now just excelling even more and taking a step further in Impact Wrestling, or the Jordan Graces and the Deonna Purrazzos, and they become a fan of Impact Wrestling as a whole. It's a bonus for all of us.
And I suppose, Josh Alexander, when we look at New Japan Wrestling, it has that sort of diehard fan base, which is sort of similar to ECW in terms of its fans are very intense. Obviously, it has a big, massive Asian sort of following, but not only that, is a massive following in the UK and places like Mexico, anywhere where wrestling is sort of appreciated. It's not really confined to Asian, as we're seeing with this battle taking place in San Jose in California as well. So is it something you always admired looking on in terms of New Japan Wrestling and trying to say to yourself, yeah, that's something that I would like to be a part of if the opportunity arrives for me as Impact Champion to compete in such a historic, really, wrestling promotion with its history, its vast history, really, in New Japan Wrestling.
Yeah, I've been an enormous fan of Japanese wrestling as a whole since the early 90s. When you're talking about the wars in All Japan, be it that or the New Japan, and then on to Noah and stuff like that in the early 2000s, just the entire presentation and style of pro wrestling is something I gravitated to, which I think, you said like they have a fan base like into an ECW where they're very passionate about that style of pro wrestling. I think it's because it's a different kind of presentation that they really get from the promotions in North America, even though it is a global company. They highlight the in-ring action first and foremost. It is the king of sports, and for me, being the walking weapon Josh Alexander, I'm regarded as one of the best bell-to-bell wrestlers in all of the world, and I take that very seriously. So going to a place like New Japan at a historic event like Battle in the Valley, which, like, you went through the entire card. I think you left out Okada versus Tanahashi, which was just announced a few days ago. With matches like that on this card, for me to just step foot in that ring and show what I can do and elevate myself and, elevate Impact Wrestling at the same time, it means a great deal to me because I've been such a big fan of their presentation and style of pro wrestling my whole life.
I've spoken to a good few Impact wrestlers in the Impact Wrestling wrestlers in the last few months or so, but the growing sort of trend is the more and more I speak to Canadian Impact wrestlers as well. You almost have your own sort of locker room there at the moment in terms of it could be Canada versus the USA very much in terms of Impact, the amount of Canadian wrestlers that are in Impact Wrestling. And as a whole, Canadian wrestling seems to be thriving at the moment in terms, there's never been so many Canadian wrestlers out there that I can remember anyway in terms of the top brands.
Well, I think there has been a ton of talent here in Canada, Canadian pro wrestling, ever since, the early 80s, with the dungeon graduates and everything. You're talking about some of the historic wrestlers of all time. When you're talking about like Brett and Owen and Dynamite and British Bulldog and all those names I can drop. But, it's carried on since into the Edges and the Christians and the Chris Jerichos and the Lance Storms, into the Kevin Owens and the Sami Zayns, now on to the Josh Alexander and Mike Baileys. And I don't want to leave out the Trish Stratuses and the Taya Valkyries and the Chelsea Greens. Like, I can go on and on. There is a ton of talent here in the Canadian independent scene right now that is yet to be seen. But the one reason why so many of us are popping up and having so much success on the global scale of pro wrestling right now, I think I can give all the credit in the world to someone like Scott D'Amore, who also is Canadian. So he has come up in this scene for the past 30 years of his career, seeing all this talent. But, much like little pockets, like you're out in Ireland, right? Yeah, so you probably have a ton of talented wrestlers that might not get the exposure, might not get seen out there. So Scott D'Amore, being from Canada, he's come up cultivating an independent scene here and also witnessing an independent scene with all us wrestlers, and he knows how talented we are. It's just a matter of getting the spotlight on us. So I think that's why a lot of us are in Impact Wrestling now, and we're finding so much success and around the entire wrestling world.
You mentioned that about in terms of Canadian wrestlers. I know, speaking about Irish presence, the amount of times that Finn Balor wrestled here in Ireland, and it was only when really the WD acquired in terms of UK Next and UK wrestling that Finn really shot to fame, and obviously now he's part of that. With the Priest and the Rhea Ripley at the moment in terms of that. So it headlines. So it can be a sort of a quick sort of shot as well, because you were very much in the independent circuit back in 2015, 2016. 5 years on now, you're top of the business. So that elevation can happen, and it can take off really in the space of 2-3 months.
Oh yeah, well, like when you liken it to someone like Finn Balor, who found all the success in the world in New Japan Pro Wrestling and all that stuff before, it's like I had a ton of success. I wrestled for 14 years before I got signed to a major company, before Impact Wrestling gave me a contract. And, really it was just a perfect time for me. I made all the mistakes in the world in those first 14 years. I have all the experience, leading into this. So finally, when I get an opportunity, I'm not making these mistakes, and which is why, I've been able to capitalize on all these opportunities I've been given to be, a Triple Crown champion in Impact Wrestling, and now, going on to New Japan Pro Wrestling to highlight my skills there.
Mm. And you sort of look back in terms of Impact Wrestling, and you see like the founding sort of champions, like when we think of AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Bobby Roode, Austin Aries, all these sort of legendary sort of champions, and you almost feel like that you sort of think to yourself that it's my time now, but I want to surpass all their sort of accolades. Do you almost feel like there's a sort of a legacy thing going on now in terms of deeming yourself, in terms of when you look at those sort of past era champions, or do you very much live in the current moment and you don't look back in terms of Impact Wrestling history?
I certainly am a kind of live in the moment kind of person. I don't want to be distracted by other things. But now, especially since becoming the longest reigning champion in the company history and all these other things, I kind of look at legacy and what the next step is and what the next goal is. And for me personally, I think when you think of TNA, the first name that pops in your head is AJ Styles. He was the flag bearer of this company for the first, 10 to 15 years. And now, we're 20 years plus into this company being a thing. And I would like to think, when I'm all said and done here in Impact Wrestling, when you think of Impact Wrestling, you think of Josh Alexander much in the same way you think of AJ Styles when you think of TNA.
Yeah, and we all know about professional wrestling in terms of there's the good guys, there's the bad guys. That's always the sort of trend. It's like every sort of movie. There always be the good guys and bad guys. And what makes a good guy really good is the strength of the bad guy in terms of the opponent. And there's also the sense when you're sharing that ring with someone, the chemistry that is sort of enjoyable. You have to say how much you loathe a person and all that, but how much fun really did you have in terms of sharing the ring the last few months with Bully Ray, in terms of that sort of chemistry, in terms, because he is the quintessential sort of bad guy. He really sort of revels in that sort of role. In terms of, reminds you of when Chris Jericho was in the WWE, when he was portraying that sort of bad guy. You could never really see him as a good guy. You always felt that he was more powerful as a bad guy. And that's the same with Bully Ray, since he's become an independent sort of wrestler. Obviously, he had that good guy rep when he was part of the Dudley Boys with Devon, but now he's on his own. It's very much that bad sort of vibe. Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy sharing those storylines, those sort of dialogue, the improv that goes on with working with a character like that?
Yeah, I love it. When I won this championship, I won it from a very prominent heel, like bad guy in Moose. And that was easy. You know what I'm saying? But then from then on, I was wrestling. I'm a newcomer to the world title scene, and I'm wrestling legends like Tomohiro Ishii, or, I'm wrestling EY, who also is a bad dude, but I was wrestling him at Slammiversary in his hometown of Nashville, Tennessee. You know what I mean? So like, it's kind of an uphill battle as it goes. And then when you step in the ring with someone like Bully Ray, who is, just so smart and so tenured, knows just how to be the most despicable, scumbag possible to make everybody hate him, it makes my job that much easier, because they just want to see me kick his ass. So, he made my job super easy. I learned a ton from him throughout that entire program, stuff that I will like take and use for the rest of my career. It was totally like incredibly valuable to me to be able to work with him when I did. I was so lucky to get that opportunity, and I enjoyed every second of it just for all that.
And Josh, in terms of looking at, in terms of the attributes, if I could possibly think of the dream match for you, obviously there's a guy there at AEW that's an Impact TNA Wrestling sort of Hall of Famer, and he's due, I say he's on his final run, but if he did step back in the ring of TNA and in Impact Wrestling as it's now known of, I just imagine that Josh Alexander versus Sting, the Stinger, that's a match made in heaven in terms of that sort of dream match. Would that be something, the icing in the cake for you, Slammiversary, Josh Alexander versus Sting, and Sting's sort of last hurrah in the sort of business to come back home to Impact Wrestling and have that sort of major throwdown between the two of you?
It would be an incredible honor. There's not too many names that I can think of that like I would give that kind of distinction to when you say it. But Sting, when I got into pro wrestling, it was 1997, 1998. I got into pro wrestling because I saw Stone Cold Steve Austin. And when I flipped the channel to the other program, I saw this Crow character in Sting that completely captivated my imagination. And he was the good guy fighting like everybody in that NWO. It seemed like an insurmountable, task at the time. But finally, when he was able to do it at Starrcade, me as a pro wrestling fan watching that, like I've been a fan of Sting forever, and on through his TNA, days and stuff like that. I was a huge TNA fan, so it would just be an honor. I can keep my fingers crossed. I can knock on wood. I can, pray to whatever I believe in and stuff that it may happen. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. But yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. And Josh Alexander, we're nearly coming to the end of our time with you now. And just one or two things. You've been all over the world. You've wrestled all over the world. Have you done their shows here in Ireland? Have you wrestled in Dublin? Have you wrestled in Belfast? Have you wrestled at the independent events here in Ireland? Have promotions brought you over here to wrestle in your time?
No, they have not. I've wrestled in the UK, probably 6 or 7 times, but it's always been kind of centralized to Manchester, England, London, all that area. So I am headed to Germany sometime this year. Hopefully I can get over to Ireland, because I've heard the scene is awesome over there, and in Scotland and all over the place. So
Josh Alexander, you're going to be in action in New Japan Wrestling in terms of its main events, Battle in the Valley, February the 18th. It can be watched, it can be viewed, streamed live on FITE TV. Do check out the FITE TV Network to see the Impact Wrestling, the longest Impact Wrestling world champion in action. Josh Alexander going down this weekend, Battle in the Valley, February the 18th, 8-man tag team match. Josh Alexander, Mascara Dorada, Adrian Quest, Rocky Romero versus Kushida, Volador Jr, Kevin Knight, and the DC. And those legendary Japanese match, Mercedes Moné, known as Sasha Banks versus Kyra, Tom Lawler versus Homicide, Brett Roser versus Kenta, Motor City Machine Guns versus West Coast Wrecking Crew, and Clark Connors versus Zack Sabre Jr., all going down the FITE TV Network, February the 18th, Battle in the Valley, New Japan Wrestling. And for me, Jim Conlan, to the longest reigning Impact World Wrestling Champion, Josh Alexander. I'm sure it's only a matter of time before we're talking about Josh Alexander versus the Stinger in Impact Slammiversary. I'll definitely be in the front row watching on. But for the moment, Josh, stay safe, take care, and God bless.
take care.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Josh.
Cool.
That was great. Next, you're going to have Alistair McGeorge in a couple minutes.
Yep.
From Metro UK. I don't know if you've spoken to him before.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
There's been so many in the UK though.
I know everybody covers wrestling there, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm just rolling through this same Zoom link with everything.
yeah, we're just going to keep the Zoom link. Now, actually, the one at 4:40, we couldn't, because of the time change. That was the guy in Australia. We weren't able to reschedule him, so you're free. We just have these two for you today.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you have any more time tomorrow.
I can make time.
Okay, if you have time in the afternoon like this, a little later than this,
I do.
we can rebook the Australian and maybe add a second one to kind of make it a good package for you, if that's all right.
Yeah, you say the time. I'm free pretty much all afternoon tomorrow. So
great. All right. Yeah, that's Liam O'Loughlin at Sporting News, which has a lot of good reach.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, good. So I'm just waiting for.
So
here he is. Oh no, this isn't Alistair McGeorge. I'm sorry. This is John Chidley Hill. You know him well, right? You guys just did a story a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Okay, here he is. Let's see. John, are you there yet?